Welcome to Talk to Tara. Today my guest is Doug Fine. Like so many Americans, NPR contributor, Doug Fine enjoys his creative comforts, but he also knows full well they keep him addicted to oil. So he wonders, is it possible to keep his Netflix and his car, his Wi-Fi and his subwoofers, and still reduce his carbon footprint? In Farewell, My Subaru, an epic adventure in local living, Doug attempts to find out, taking readers along for the ride as he moves to a remote ranch in New Mexico and brazenly vows to grow his own food, use sunlight to power his world, and drive his truck on restaurant grease. Welcome to the show, Doug. It's definitely a pleasure to have you on today.
Thanks for having me.
Now, can a normal American actually live their life oil-free? Is it possible?
Definitely. In fact, at this point, after a year or so, I don't even notice that there's hardly any petroleum in my life, and I have all the comforts of middle America.
Does one necessarily need to move to a ranch in New Mexico to accomplish this?
Definitely not. You can do it in any place, suburban, urban, or rural.
So why New Mexico for you?
Two reasons. One is I really like the area. It just happens to be the place that I'm drawn to. But also, it's really excellent for solar power. It's like so much sun, you can practically point a panel down toward the ground and you'll get enough sunlight.
Oh, so this is a big incentive for you. Because originally you are from New York, and you're not really that mechanically, or you weren't that mechanically inclined. Did you have any hesitations at all about jumping into this unknown?
Huge hesitations, and justifiable hesitations, because a lot of Farewell My Subaru is just about how I've screwed up in trying to do all these things like install solar panels, drive on vegetable oil, raise chickens and goats. But in the end, the reader can laugh at me and hopefully not make the same mistakes that I made.
So maybe they can learn a little bit about your faux pas.
Exactly.
And did you plan on writing this book all along? Was that part of the reasoning as well for living an oil-free life?
Kind of. I would want to live that life anyway, but I'm kind of making a habit now of leaping into lifestyles I'm not prepared for and writing about them. My first book was called Not Really an Alaskan Mountain Man, and it was about going from the New York suburbs by a few stops in between journalism around the world, but moving into a rural Alaska cabin for several years. And so this was sort of the next step, is going to into a lifestyle I wasn't familiar with.
Being from New York and now in rural New Mexico, do you miss New York?
Not really. I mean, I grew up, there's great things about every place. I mean, every time I leave the Pacific Northwest, I miss, the good sushi and stuff. So I miss every place that I like, and there's great things about New York, Broadway and museums and everything. But I don't miss growing up on concrete. I don't miss eating the, chain store pizzas and the fake tomatoes in the supermarkets. I enjoy living in a living ecosystem.
So what is the social life like where you live in New Mexico?
Well, it's funny that you asked that, because I got my goats off of Craigslist, and so when I went to pick up these goats, it felt like this woman wanted to meet me on the street corner in Tucson, Arizona, and so I'm passing her money, and she's giving me these goats, and I'm carrying these little baby goats back to my car, and people are looking at me going, I wonder what kind of partying there is going on in this guy's life. He's bringing goat sacrifices or something. But in actuality, I'm with a fantastic woman, and so we have a great life.
Oh, so did you meet her after you moved to New Mexico?
I did. In fact, at the very, very end of the book, I mean, we don't want to give away too much for folks who haven't read it, but there's kind of a happy ending.
There is a happy ending.
Yeah.
Which is, I'm sure it's not the ending, though, is it?
No, in fact, a lot has happened since then, and I blog about this at DougFine.com, the continuing carbon neutral misadventures. So the book just sort of tells the story of the first year, and it just all the misadventures in the book continue.
What were your 4 biggest goals for your first year living in New Mexico?
I wanted to stop driving on unleaded fuel, stop driving on petroleum, basically. I wanted to move my whole ranch's power over to solar. And I wanted to grow as much of my food as I can, or get the carbon miles out of the food. And carbon miles is the secret petroleum that's sort of in your food when you get it from far away, because it takes a lot of, let's say, diesel to transport it to your supermarket. And then also I just sort of wanted to survive in such a way that I wasn't causing an extreme embarrassment to myself.
And did you do this just for yourself, or is it because you wanted to share this with others?
Both. I wanted to do it, but I also wanted to see whether or not a regular person could get the petroleum out and just keep their comforts. Like right now, my life is pretty much all on solar power, and I have, fridge, washing machine, really powerful stereo, lights, all the good stuff that you'd want in your life, internet, and none of it is coming from fossil fuels. It's all solar powered. So I don't even notice that I'm on solar power, except when the folks on regular electricity, grid electricity, when they get a power failure, my whole valley will be blocked out, and I'll be the only person still on solar. Still with electricity.
So apparently your oven still is not run by solar power, is that correct?
That's right.
Do you have plans to change that?
I do. So the deal on that is I could have called myself totally off the grid and gotten a propane stove or a propane oven, but I thought that would have been a little bit hypocritical because, propane's a fossil fuel. So I kept that on the grid, and the plan is to try to get that onto methane, which means harvesting your own waste, which is, gross, but they do it in India, and from what I understand, you only need 150 million people using a restroom for a year in order to cook one chicken, so I think we're in good shape.
And so how long do you think it'll actually take you before you can start running your oven from this?
I'm sort of dreading this project, but it's my hope that in the next year I might get something like this going.